is YouTube Online, and today we're going to be talking about five characteristics, yes, five characteristics of course, being kind. So let's open our time with a word of prayer. Father, thank you today for the wonderful characteristics we're going to be talking about in the area of kindness. We pray your blessing upon it now in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, of course, Paul says in First Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 to 8, he says, love is patient and love is kind. And it's so important these days, especially with the chaos, confusion, the crisis, and urgent that seems to be setting our world almost every single day. It is so important that we walk in love today. And love, of course, displays kindness. When you have love in your heart, you want to display that heart, that love in your world today. And the first characteristic, of course, of kindness and of love is to be a good listener. In fact, the apostle James says this in James 1:19. He says, "Be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." Now, we've talked about communication before, especially in relationships, but did you know that, of course, a good listener understands that 80% of communication is the ability to listen and to understand. When I was doing communication way back in my training as a radio announcer, they said you need to ask questions, to ask insightful and also as well direct questions. If you don't understand something, if you need more information, don't be afraid to ask the question. Also, as well, good communication is listening to someone's story. People out there want to share their story, they want to share their heart. And so, by you being a good listener and taking time to listen and understand the thoughts and feelings of others, you are actually showing not just sympathy and not just empathy, but you are showing kindness as well. And that is so important in this world today. Did you know that back in 1969, there was a song that was written by Burt Bacharach and sung by Dionne Warwick, which said, "What the world needs now is love, sweet love." Well, that's exactly what the world needs right now. It almost feels like me that we are back in the 1960s. Did you know that in the 1960s it was a real time of turbulence and upheaval? Social change was happening, and that's what's happening right now. There's a lot of social change happening, and also political and educational changes happening right in front of us, and it happening in real time. Back in the 1960s, of course, there were all kinds of riots. Right now in the city of Minneapolis, for example, there's riots going on, and people are not only being bad, but they're also exemplifying the good as well. People are caring for one another on levels that they haven't seen for quite a while. Apathy is slowly disappearing, and people are standing up to governmental control. Why? Because they understand that kindness is something that is not talked about, it is something that is demonstrated. So if you're going to be kind today, the first quality, of course, is to be a good listener and to listen to someone's story, because it can literally change someone's life. The other day, I was listening to a young man who talked about the fact that when he was 13 years old, he was sitting in a lunchroom with two of his friends, and he noticed that there was a girl sitting by herself. Now, you know, that moment, he said, "You know what, guys? I think I'm going to go sit with her for lunch." And so he said, "Would you guys join me?" They said, "Oh, no, no, we're not going to do that." So what did he do? He went and he joined her for lunch. he sat down with her and talked with her. Well, he learned that she had a couple of really important things that she liked. And he thought to himself, you know what? I'm going to meet that need and I'm going to make sure that she feels and knows that she's, loved and also appreciated. So what he did was he went to the principal and said, I would like to put these two items in her locker. Would you mind opening the locker for me? And he says, you can stand there and you can see me putting these items in. I just want to be kind. Now, the principal knew the young lady and knew her situation. He said, that would be lovely. So the principal opened up the locker and a note fell out that had been written in red marker. And he went to pick it up, and that being the young boy, and it opened up, and it was there he saw how that she felt about herself. She said, I'm ugly. I feel like nobody notices me. And she says, I feel like I should end my life. Well, of course, he said, I didn't intend to see that. And he says, I put it back in her locker. And the principal closed up the locker. The next day, the young lady came and found him and said, you made my day. She said, I had been feeling like nobody cared. I felt like nobody really understood me. But your act of kindness changed my life. And he made a determination. He was in grade 7 at the time. And he said, every day I would look for somebody that I could help. And he did that during his grade 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 year. And he's doing it now in university. And many, many people have come up to him and say, your act of kindness has changed my life. And it was all because he chose to simply listen to someone's story. Maybe that's what you and I need to do. Look for someone who seems to be a bit of an outcast and go and listen to the story. You don't know. You may have found a new friend. You may have helped somebody in a way that you could never dream possible. The second quality, of course, of kindness is empathy. They are compassionate and treat people with respect regardless of their differences. Empathy is literally putting yourself in, of course, the shoes of another person. I've used this example before. Ketchikan, who is the great Iroquois chief. Now, the Iroquois, many people don't know this, were, of course, one of the tribes that were found in, of course, the province of Quebec and the great state of New York. Now, they were the most powerful and feared First Nations tribe for, the early part of the settling of both Canada and United States. Ketchikan was the great chief and he led the Iroquois nation. Now, the Iroquois nation was fierce. They were conquerors of that area. And he was a cruel, but also as well a powerful man. He came to know Jesus Christ. And after he came to know Jesus Christ, he became the kindest, wisest, and most compassionate and empathetic individual. He was asked by one of his tribal leaders, how can you do that? He says very simply, I try to walk in the moccasins of another individual. He tried to place himself in that individual's shoes and try to understand what they were going through. And that's exactly what we should do as well. We should try to put ourselves in, of course, the shoes of that person. That doesn't mean that we put up with disrespect, but what it simply means is, of course, we choose, of course, to, not enable them, but empathize with them and try to understand why it is that they're reacting and acting the way that they are. And when we do that, it gives us greater patience with that individual. And it helps us to love them a little bit more. Because remember, love is patient and love is kind. And so this is another characteristic of being kind and walking in love. And remember, it was Paul who said this. He said, these three remain. He's talking about the three virtues. He says, faith, hope, and love. You see, when you have the foundation in your life of love, you are going to walk in a faithfulness. You are going to see things the way they should be seen, and you're going to not only give yourself hope, but the person who you're talking with and interacting with hope as well. Also, as well, another characteristic, of course, of kindness is generosity. Kind people are willing to give their time, resources, and talents to help others. One of my favorite men that I've ever met was a guy named John. John was an individual who was a mechanic. He was from New Zealand and he lived in the community that I pastored, which was Slave Lake. John was known for his generosity, his time, and his talents when it came to people. He would often fix people's vehicles for free. He fixed my vehicles for free. All I had to do was buy the parts. And then he would put the parts in, and then he would, say, I'd say, okay, John, how much? Nothing, nothing at all. And that was his reputation throughout the town. He was also the assistant fire chief in the community. And many times he would go and do fire and rescue. That's what they did in the fire department. He was a trained EMT as well. And many, many times he would go and rescue, help people, that were in accidents and also as well needed medical assistance. When John passed away, I had the privilege of being one of the individuals that officiated his funeral. Did you know that there were over 400 people that were at his funeral from the community? Now, interesting enough, the situation was I heard testimony after testimony how that John had helped people and had been a generous individual. Generosity, of course, is not just, giving money, it is giving your time. It is giving your talent and your resources to help others, to be a blessing, to choose, of course, to, touch others in a kind and patient way. Also, as well, the next quality is patience. That's right. Being patient. That means remaining calm and patient, especially in difficult situations. I want to tell you something. People will either rise or fall when it comes to a chaotic and also a tough situation. You will see the best and you will see the worst. My wife, for example, she watches British medical shows. And on the British medical shows, you see these paramedics and these EMTs going into very stressful medical situations. And their calmness and also as well their patience either escalates the situation or de-escalates the situation. You and I can either escalate a situation or de-escalate a situation just by our patience. I remember when I was a young man and I was, driving down the road, 116th Street in Edmonton. And as I was driving down the street, a man pulled up in front of us in my lane. Well, we basically ran into each other, and he came out of his car and he was mad. And I knew right in that moment that this situation could escalate very quickly. So I said to him, "You know what? We met by accident." Right then and there, he started laughing. And we laughed about the situation because, there wasn't anything we could do about it. He ran into me and he says, "I'm so sorry." He says, "I didn't see you." I said, "Look, we're in the middle of a intersection." I said, "We're under the light." But I kept my demeanor and I kept my patience. And guess what? what could have been a very escalated situation did not turn out that way. We ended up taking each other's um, licenses and insurance and registration. We exchanged those information. I said, "Can you drive?" He says, "Yeah, I can." And I said, "My car, I can drive as well." I pulled the fender and I drove away, and he drove away. We contacted our insurance agents and our insurance companies, and both vehicles were fixed. So the simple fact is, by your patience, you can escalate or de escalate a situation. When you walk in kindness, you're not looking at every incident as a personal attack. You are looking at as an opportunity to touch others in a positive manner and to be kind. Also, as well, the last quality of kindness is non judgment. Most kind individuals do not judge others based on appearance or assumption. And they actually rather strive to know people. You see, that is real kindness. People today are looking for kindness. And when they have someone being kind to them and loving them, it actually triggers a response of wanting to do the same to others. I have heard of story after story of people who had received kindness from someone else and made the decision that they were going to be kind as well. One of the most well known Hollywood individuals is, of course, Keanu Reeves. And Keanu Reeves happens to be, was raised in the city of Winnipeg. And he's known as the nicest guy in Hollywood. He was asked one time, he says, "How come you're so kind?" He says, I grew up in a neighborhood with a bunch of people that were always kind to me. He says, "I wasn't always the outgoing individual that I am." He says, "Actually, I'm quite shy and reserved." But he says, "Being an actor gives me the opportunity and the platform to show kindness." I saw a video one time of Keanu Reeves, and it was interesting that someone had backed into his motorcycle. And the reporter knew that it was Keanu Reeves. And here this individual was, saying, "Well, I don't know who this is." He says, "It's Keanu Reeves." He says, "I don't know that." Keanu Reeves walked up and he looked at his motorcycle and he looked at the young lady that had done it. She realized that it was his. And he walked over, he put his hand on her shoulder, and he said, "No damage done." He says he took the motorcycle, he kicked it. It was an old style motorcycle. It didn't have an electric start. So he kicked it over a few times and then it started. And he said, "No problem at all." And then he actually was very kind to the young lady, even though the reporter wanted to escalate the situation. He said, "Nope." He says, "Everything is fine." And he rode off in his motorcycle, nothing. And he said to the reporter, "Nothing to see here." You see, in that incident, Keanu Reeves showed his kindness and his compassion for other individuals. We can do the same by, of course, exemplifying these 5 qualities that I've been talking about today. So, what are those 5 qualities again? Be a good listener. Remember, communication is 80% the ability to be able to hear. And when you are hearing, you, of course, are being a kind individual. Empathy. Try to put yourself in the place of the person that you are interacting with. It will show respect regardless of the differences. Be generous. Don't be afraid to listen to people and give your time and talents and resources on their behalf. Your one act of kindness could actually change someone's life. Show some patience. Remain calm and patient, especially during difficult situations. I know that EMTs, paramedics, and also as well first responders are trained, but they also have that in their demeanor. They also have that in their outlook because they understand that if they remain calm, a situation can very easily be dealt with in a proper manner. Also, as well, be non-judgmental. Understand that you don't know what that person is going through at that time. You don't know the background. So unless they tell you, it is important to understand to treat them the way that you would want to be treated. That is, of course, known as the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Remember, no matter how anyone treats you, you want to treat them the way that you would want to be treated. This shows kindness. So today, these are wonderful qualities that should be exhibited in your life and in my life. My name is Robert Dean Steele. If you like what you've been hearing and seeing, I encourage you to press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, as well today, don't forget to check out my YouTube shorts every day. I do a series of small videos similar to this, but they all are only about a minute long, and each one talks about different things and different aspects of life. Check those out as well. So you have yourself a great and godly day. And don't forget to be kind to someone today. Remember, love is patient and love is kind. Thank you for joining me.